is an initiative within the community of democracies that aims at sharing experiences on how to make democracies work. And this webinar is a series in one of a series in which democracy experts are discussing their work or their thoughts, and viewers can ask questions online, or in this case actually through groups, or participate in the discussion. I would like to extend a very warm welcome not only to our online viewers, but also to our connected audiences in Chisinau and Tunis. And you will be invited to join the discussions afterwards, after the presentations. This is a novelty actually for the LEN webinars, that we have two connected audiences, one in Moldova and one in Tunisia. And we would like to thank the East Europe Foundation and also the Institute for Public Policy in Moldova and the Arab Institute for Human Rights in Tunisia for agreeing to host and organize these two linked meetings. And thank you very much to all of those who are involved in setting this up. You know, there is an expression that the country always has an army, either its own army or someone else's. Perhaps you could say, when it comes to party and finances, that a party is always financed either from public funds or someone else's funds. And the type of funds that a party has naturally has an effect on the politics and the behavior of that party. The issue of financing of political parties is very controversial, and it's very important. We will today seek to understand this problem better and evaluate the different possibilities of public funding of political parties. And we have asked two very distinguished persons with thorough knowledge on this matter, both former politicians, to elaborate on the topic. And I'm very honored that His Excellency, the Honorable Luis Alberto Lacalle, presently a senator in Uruguay's Congress, but previous former president of Uruguay between the years 1990 and 95. I'm very happy that President Lacalle has agreed to join our webinar. You have a thorough knowledge of what it is to organize and finance a party, because you served twice as a president of your party, the Partido Nacional, and also have been engaged for a very long time, starting in politics, as far as I understand, at the age of 17, and serving as a member of parliament until the military coup in '73, and then returning to politics in '84 after democracy was restored in Uruguay. Our second very distinguished presenter at this webinar is Dr. Peter Hack from Hungary, who used to be a member of parliament after communism fell in Hungary. And Dr. Hack was one of the master builders of the democratic constitutional system in Hungary. In parliament, Dr. Hack served as president of the Constitutional and Judicial Affairs Committee, and as a law professor and sitting on the advisory board of Transparency International, he enjoys one of the highest reputations among experts who are combating corruption. And I'm very grateful, Dr. Hack, that you agreed to join this webinar. After these two presentations, there will be time for discussion and questions. I'm very much looking forward to having a discussion, particularly perhaps with our two connected audiences in Moldova and in Tunisia. And first of all, I would like to give the floor to the distinguished President Lacalle to expand your thoughts on the issue of financing of political parties. Please, you have the floor, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Ambassador Leissner, and thank you for your kind words, and my greetings to all that are connected through this marvelous scheme of being able to be in different parts of the world and chatting and talking. I must tell you that, of course, I come from the position of there is no democracy without political parties. So we leave that discussion for another day. we need political parties, and political parties need funding to develop their work in two different and very different times. The permanent action of political parties, and of course the peak of activity that we call elections. I want to make this difference, but because there's a great difference in the financing of these two different actions of the parties. What are the main necessities, the main needs of the parties in the electoral process? Well, nowadays, and almost everywhere, my country has only 2.5 million voters. In India, you have 800 million. So the differences are big, but there is a single issue that connects the biggest acting democracy and one of the smallest: the need to arrive with your message to the people. And the budgets of parties are very much conditioned by the weight of the financing of publicity in television and radio. I begin by the end. Why do we need the money? For what? We need it to pay for publicity. How do we get the money? Well, in my country at least, we have a very well-regulated system in which you have three kinds of contributions. You have one contribution by the state. For every vote you get, the state will give you, after the election, a certain amount of money, $15 or something like that nowadays. There is the individual contribution that has a limit. And there is the other big, mainly from the enterprises and the business sector, of big contributions that have also a limit, a roof, and must be declared one by one and shown to the Electoral Commission. Why are we arguing for a reform of this? Because we think that publicity in television, being 80% of the budget of any candidate, I think anywhere, at least my experience is that, should be assumed by the state. Instead of promoting candidates through ads and publicity that has the same techniques of selling soap or selling toothpaste, with now nice music, nice images, I think that the presence of parties in the TV and radio should be about messages, not promotion with a nice music, I say it again, and nice colors. It should be, this is the message of Mr. So-and-so, who is candidate of the party, such and such party. I think that that would eliminate 80% of the budget of the political campaigns. And when you need less money, it's much more easy to finance. And with less money, there is less influence of big donors in the policies or the positions of the parties. Of course, in my country we have another proviso, which is there is a certain time in which you can appear in television and radio with your publicity. It's 30 days before the election. That, for the TV viewers, is a godsend limit, because in the last days the only thing they see as publicity is every minute a different candidate, and in the end people don't listen anymore. They put off their TV and go to the cables because they are fed up with publicity. And the content of publicity is the aspect I want to say about this system. What are the candidates telling the voters? Are they really sending a message? Do they have clear positions in the issues? And that must be the content of the publicity. The state subsidy gives the opportunity to anybody to run for election. It doesn't pay for the normal cost of an election, but if we reduce the amount of money because there's no publicity paid by the parties in the TV, but it's given by the state with fairness, then you can put the possibility of being elected in the reach of almost anyone. And that's a big opening in the sense of participation. The private funding, we said it's popular, and then the other part comes from business. There is limits in the amounts, and there is accountability, very severe accountability, that it's open to the public. After the election, anybody can know who gave Mr. Lacalle such and such money for his campaign. And this is essential because public control is the first and most important control. You can have accountants and you have technicians, but people through this marvelous media of entering into the online and knowing all about the expenditure, where did the money come from, and where and why and how was it spent, I think that we have a good system. So in every country have shades in the sense of democracy and the possibility of doing things. I would suggest, if I were to organize a system from zero, no TV ads like in England. Some state-given minutes, not for propaganda in the commercial sense, but in messages, like in Brazil. And then with less money to spend and with messages, not propaganda, I repeat it for the third time, candidates would be in the position of saying something, not just showing a nice thing with no content. I think this can be the essence of reform in the countries in which you already have a system. But if you want to build a system from scratch, I would clearly suggest what I had just said. Cheaper campaigns because there is no expenditure in TV, less possibility of receiving money with conditions, and messages more than propaganda. That's my first contribution, Ambassador. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, excellent. Now I would like to ask Dr. Hack if you please would take the floor to give your presentation. You have the floor, please. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Greetings for everybody. It's a great privilege and an honor for me to participate on this discussion. I especially would like to address my appreciation to President Lacalle's sacrifice, because Uruguay is playing a game against Italy in the same time, parallelly, and he sacrificed his time to participate to this discussion. I really appreciate that. Yes, it's going on parallelly. So I hope we will see Uruguay several times in the future couple of games.
We're hoping that you will do well, even though you are dividing your attention.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. I would like to talk very shortly within my 10 minutes presentation about 4 topics. The first is, why do I think it's so important to solve the problem of the political party financing and campaign financing? The second topic will be, why is it so difficult to solve this problem. The third point is what are the possible solutions, what are the possible legal solutions for solving this problem, and the fourth, what kind of problems could emerge from even from good intention to solve the problem. So why is it so important to solve the political party financing and campaign financing issue? I think that political party and campaign corruption is the root of every kind of corruption. If in the political realm there is a kind of corruption, tolerated corruption, if there are no clear regulations, if there are no transparency regarding political party money, then every and each side of the society could refer to this fact and could say that, look, the politicians are implementing easy regulations for themselves, so let us be the same solution, let us behave in the same way. So even if the political party corruption is not the biggest sum within a country, or economically it's not a very important element, socially, morally, and politically, this is the most important point. And every country which would like to solve the problem of corruption should start the solving from the top, from the political party perspective. Second point, why is it so difficult to solve the problem? Because there are visible conflicting interests. The interest of the politicians and the parties in the short-term interest is not to regulate, not to have tough rules on political party money collections or political party money spending. Politicians would get free hand to campaign, free hand to collect money, free hand to spend money. This is the short-term interest of the politicians and the political parties. And obviously, there are a lot of politicians who is ready to get easy money through the dark money flowing within the political system. The short and long-term interest of the public is just the opposite. So there is an invisible conflict between the public interest and the political party and politicians' interest, and those countries are lucky where the public can convince the politicians that the short-term they should sacrifice their short-term interest and follow the long-term interest of the country and the society. What kind of solutions, this is my third point, what kind of solutions could we find? In the literature, in the scientific literature, and in the public discussion regarding political party financing, we often use the terms good practices and best practices, and I believe that there are good practices, and in some sphere there are even best practices. But I think it's very important to realize that there is no such one-fit-all solution. There is no such solution which could be applied in any country, in any society. Any solution what a country chooses is very much depend on the historical, social, cultural tradition of the specific country, and a solution which could be used in the US, which could be useful in the US, and which some would call as a best practice in the US, could be absolutely not workable in the Middle East or in Far Asia. The cultural, political, social, and even economical traditions are very much influencing this field. As President Lacalle already mentioned, I think one of the most important pillar of the solutions is transparency. the larger is the transparency, the larger is the possibility for the public to control the flow of the money in the political field, is the better. So if I would like to recommend any kind of solution, I would say transparency, transparency, transparency. As much it is public, any kind of money moving within the political realm is better for the countries. The other pillar is the restrictions, and some of them was already mentioned by President Lacalle. Restrictions on fundraising. So there are countries where there are limitations on the fundraising, so the law establish limits for the political parties to collect fundraising. In some countries, there is a top money what could be collected. Large donors are not allowed to sponsor political parties because this is a danger that a rich company could buy a political party and could influence the legislation through this non-fair methods, and the rich people could overrun the democratic result of the elections, because despite of the votes, those who are financing the parties could buy the final decisions of the legislation and create a political legitimacy deficit. So this is a possibility to limit the fundraising. On the other hand, there is a possibility to limit the campaign spending. I fully agree that there is a possibility to limit the most expensive parts of the campaign. This is the media campaign. So when there is when there is no limitation, I would say that there is no such amount of money which a party couldn't spend in the media. So hundreds of millions could be sent in the media, and this is the budget of the campaign is like a large vacuum which is swallowing the money, and those who are responsible for that are trying to do whatever they can to collect as much money as possible. And even in poor countries like in Hungary, parties spend a lot of money for the campaign in the media, especially in the media. So this is a possibility to use these elements, and I think that the best way is to use a kind of combinations of these elements: transparency, restrictions on fundraising, restrictions on campaign spending. But I have to add that any solution could work if there is free press in the country, which is openly and freely inform the public about these things. If there are enough strong NGOs who are monitoring the campaign spending. For example, in Hungary, TI Hungary and some other NGOs work together in the national elections in this year. In April we had the national elections, and then we have the European Parliament elections, and NGOs established a website where they follow the campaign spending and publish the results, even if the country official organs are not doing that. And plus there is a very important need for an independent audit agency which can verify the results and which can implement sanctions. The last point, and I'm running out of my time, what are the problems? Even with good intentions, limitations and restrictions could lead to bad results. For example, in 1996, in Hungary, with good intention, our political party suggested to have 1 million Hungarian forints, which is approximately $4,500 US, cap for individual MPs, what they can spend in a campaign. This was written in the law, and because there was a legitimate part, $4,500 US, which could be spent, obviously, throughout the years, parties spent much more because it was not enough. Even with good intention, the money was not enough. So the legislation, the good intention legislation, forced both the parties and the sponsors of the parties into the dark economy. So they were forced to do everything in the dark because within the legitimate framework it was impossible. Other problem, what was emerged in this year's election in Hungary, we used the British model, which was mentioned by President Lacalle. No media, no commercial media campaign. It was very good intention to stop the media spending for the parties, but some critics are saying that prohibiting the political campaign from the commercial media, where the 80% of the viewers are watching the commercial channels and not the public channels, it could damage the open discussion, the open democratic competition, and the government party had a large advantage in the public media, and the opposition didn't have a balanced possibility. So that was my comment, and I'm looking forward to the questions, and I would be happy to answer for that.
Yes, Ambassador Leissner, if I can have a minute for some footnotes.
Please, you're welcome to comment, President Lacalle.
And Dr. Hack's very much better presentation than mine. I have been in this activity since I was 17, and I'm 73 now, so I have seen elections coming and going for the whole of my life. One thing, you cannot buy an election. Money helps, but if you don't have an idea, you don't have a principle, you don't have a force, you won't go to victory with money alone. That's my experience. Money doesn't make money alone. Of course it helps, and it helps a lot. Second, I think that if we can distinguish commercial ads like toothpaste and cleaning elements from political messages, we are doing a great favor for the discussion that Dr. Hack was mentioning. Instead of having a nice song with a nice, beautiful lady and children coming out from school and a tractor in the middle of a farm and the port full of gulls and steamships, all ads are the same. We can have 1 minute or 2 minutes for Mr. So-and-so in education. That is a qualitative change. And I think that translating or changing ads into messages can contribute greatly to the discussion Dr. Hack was mentioning. So I don't think money is able to do the whole miracle. It helps, but you need a force. Of course, when you see that the biggest democracy, the biggest or the oldest, like the United States, the recent decision by the Supreme Court on eliminating the roof of contributions has been tremendous in the sense of doing damage to democracy in the United States. The PACs, Public Action Committees, were the shortcut to I'm sorry, jump over the prohibitions or the limits. So we must be very keen in establishing through laws a fail-safe system, ironclad system. The only contributions are such and such. The limit is such and such, and they must be through the bank that is selected by the candidate, and all the papers, all the receipts will be made public after there is as in my country, there is a final report on the accountants of each candidate saying we spent such and such that came from whom and companies and people. If you narrow the possibility of spending through the elimination of television, which is the most expensive media of the media. In my country, they are charging now $6,000 a minute. In a minute, you can have 3 more or less good ads of 20 seconds. That's very expensive. But if that could be substituted by either messages in public television or messages in commercial television, but paid for the state, by the state, that would be a very well spent money and would eliminate the possibilities and the opportunities of graft and monkey business with money.
Thank you very much, President Lacalle, and thank you so much, Dr. Huck, for these very interesting presentations and the comments. I think that both of you made the case for a combination of state state framework to control the financing of both political parties and campaigns, with a combination of public funds and also rules regulating how private funding is raised and spent. And you argued strongly, not the least, for transparency and the possibility to exert control from the press, etc., for the private funding part. And I want to particularly highlight that because I think it is a very, very important point. Now, I would like to invite our audiences in Moldova and Tunisia to make comments, and perhaps if I could start with asking our friends in Chisinau if you would want to ask any questions or comment on the two presentations. Please, over to Chisinau.
Thank you very much, President Lacalle. Thank you, Dr. Huck, for very interesting presentations. Actually, the issue we're discussing now for Moldova is very important. Probably I would share the opinion of my colleagues here. I'm a well-known person. So I'm Arkady Barbaroshi, for those of you who haven't met me at land meetings. I'm a director of the Institute for Public Policy, which is a small think tank in Chisinau. Once again, it's very important, the issue, and probably I can say that public financing in Moldova is at the level of some kind of yield capitalism. Because yes, we do have some legal framework for financing political parties, which only allow private financing. The state is not involved yet in financing political parties, despite the fact that there is an old law passed in the parliament in 2007, but not yet enforced due to, as politicians say, due to the restrictions on the budget, the constraints, budget constraints. In the existing legislation, there are limits for contributions, but those limits are extremely high. So it's in the existing law, there is, as far as I'm not wrong, 400 or 500 average salaries, average month salaries for private contributions for physical persons, and 1,000 average month salaries for corporate contributions, which
$100,000 and $200,000.
Which more or less for physical person $100,000 and for corporation $200,000 contribution. These are limitations. Formally, there is a requirement of transparency, but, and this is my question to both of you, what kind of punishment for political parties or donors exists if they contribute more than existing limitations, for instance, or spend more than existing limitations. We don't have limitation on spending. For instance, in Moldova, we had some curious cases when unemployed people donate $100,000 to political parties, or pensioners donate $50,000 to political parties, which is the kind of very curious things. The next question to you would be, are there any kind of legal conditions or legal requirements for fiscal authorities to verify those physical persons who donate very significant amount of money, to verify whether they have paid or not taxes, for instance?
Thank you very much, Alcalle. I'm sorry, was that the end of your question?
My ideas, maybe my colleagues can add something.
Can I ask some questions? My name is Natalia Jurash. I represent, let's say, the Central Electoral Commission of Moldova. And I would have questions to both great speakers. Thank you for your presentations, by the way. About the accountability. So, which body would be the best to oversight political finance? What is your recommendation? And as Mr. Barbarossa mentioned already, the system, but not punishment, I would say the sanction system, which would be the best that you at least from your experience, you saw and you would recommend to the new democracies?
If I may, of course, it's very difficult to make comparisons between countries that are very different. My country is a small one. We have 2.3 million voters registered to vote. So
comparable to Moldova.
The same in Moldova.
Yeah.
Well, you can almost know them by name, one by one.
Sometimes we do.
Imagine the difference in Brazil or in India or the United States. So you must allow some bigger part of the budgets to be in the media, because through television you can be seen by millions of people. In my country, it's not that necessary. The size of the electorate then has to be a condition of the legislation. But anyway, in my country, we have fines. We have an electoral commission, electoral court, and we have the fines. I have here the law, which are very, very heavy, and they are sanctions through the judicial system, and they can sell your house, and you are liable with all your properties. And if it's a company, if it's an enterprise, it's a business, they are heavier still. So I do think it's very important to have the sanctions, because as Immanuel Kant taught us, there's no rule without a sanction. No? Well, you must have a sanction for these demeanors or even criminal acts. But you must have not jail, but fines. Fines hurt more than anything. On the second, I was hearing Mr. Meracre, whom I saw here I saw in the last meeting we had with you people in Madrid. I think that there is no one single method, but the main lines are: try to make the election campaigns cheaper, smaller, through eliminating or substituting the commercial TV by the state TV or state-paid messages. Second, put a limit, a roof in the contributions. Make them through the banking system, not in the pocket, not in the hat. You go to the bank and say, I want to contribute to Mr. Lacalle's campaign, and I'm giving $1,000, $500. And then having the necessity of reporting to the press and showing to the press, signed by legal accountants with their own responsibility of the final balance of the campaign. We received such and such amount from Mr. So-and-so and the company and such and such. We spent in transport, in printing, in whatever, this amount. There is a balanced budget, there is a deficit, there is a superávit, but that with responsibility, personal responsibility, which is the thing that hurts and makes people open their eyes when they're signing a document.
Thank you very much, President Lacalle, for that excellent answer to the questions from our colleagues in Moldova. And thank you very much, Mr. Barbarossi, and the rest of you for these excellent questions. Now, before asking Dr. Hack to comment, I would like to ask the group in Tunisia, in Tunis, to please take the floor and make comments or ask questions to our key presenters. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador. This is Abdelbast Ben Hassan, the President. Can you hear me, Ambassador?
Yes, I can hear you, but not very well. But please go ahead.
Ambassador, thank you very much. This is Abdelbast from the Arab Institute for Human Rights. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Grateful for giving us this opportunity to speak to your distinguished speakers and our friends in Moldova. We have here two questions for the moment. Please.
Hello, my name is Haytham. Thank you very much for the two interesting presentations. So first of all, I want to emphasize on the fact that funds given by the government are very important because they will give similar opportunities to political parties, and also they will limit the conflict of interests. And I think that there are several attractive models, like the model in the States, for example, giving to the to people the opportunity to give to participate to fundraising of political parties while paying their taxes. So my question is related to the situation in Tunisia. As you know, we start a voter registration now, and I think in Tunisia we have two problems. First of all, we have a limited number of NGOs working on the monitoring of funding of political parties, and personally I know only one NGO called iWatch. And the second problem is that we have of course electoral law, but we don't apply this law on political parties. So what are your recommendations? And thank you.
Thank you. Second question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ben Hassan. Did we have a second question? No. If not, then please, I would like to invite our two presenters. Perhaps you could start, Dr. Hack. You have the floor.
Thank you. I fully agree what was told in the previous discussion regarding the questions from Moldova, so I won't repeat it. I really agree with the notion that there is a need, an absolute need for proper sanctions. Financial sanctions are good. In Hungary, the law says that if somebody overspent, the individual or the party had to pay back to the budget twice the amount which was unlawfully used for the election campaign. I have to emphasize that to enforcing such kind of sanctions, there is an extremely important need to have a really independent election commission which has got the right and the tools for checking the numbers, checking the reality, which has got the staff which is working for that in an independent, non-partisan way, which has got the trust from the public, so the public believes that what the election commission is doing is not partial, not just for one or another political party's interest. There is a great need for an independent audit institution, so which has the capacity to monitor the situation, and there is a need for an independent election court or administrative court which can implement the sanctions. Even it is possible to have a repeated election when there is a serious fraud, and the court can say that, for example, in a constituency there were so many uncertainties and so many misuse of money that there must be a repeated election, which is again a great sanction to force the election to be repeated. Coming to the question of the funds given from the government, and I think that it's referred for the question from Moldova as well, that if here in Hungary we are coming from a relatively new democracy, and it is very difficult to sell the idea for the public that the budget have to spend money for the political parties. Democracy is a costly project. So it's good when the public realize that it is better if there are transparent public spending for political parties than non-transparent, illegal, especially when foreign countries are sponsoring parties, which is illegal in Hungary, but there is a possibility to circumvent that kind of regulations throughout funds which were established by states and looks like an NGO, but really there are state money behind that fund. So it is better when the state distributes some money among politicians and party. And I would very much promote the idea that the distribution of public funds, the public money, should very much depend on the votes what a party collect, as it was mentioned in the case of Uruguay, that if you can get support from the public, if you have votes, you can get money. Plus there are countries where the public money is depend how much money you can collect from among the citizens or among the business people. There is a possibility to implement a model where if you can get the money from the public, first you can get $1 from the public, then the state gives you another $1. So the state distribution of money depend on your money collection ability, which more or less shows that there is real support. So it's very important to avoid possibility for politicians or parties to misuse the public money. To Haritem's question from Tunis about the NGOs, I think that if you are building a democracy, obviously this is a priority to have political parties, democratic rules, but political parties are not enough to establish a democracy. Without NGOs, without flourishing NGOs, or which can monitor the election, you can have an election, but it is very easy that the public lost the trust on the election results, and we could see in some countries that even after the election, the majority is questioning the fairness of the election, and the election itself doesn't solve the problem of the legitimacy of the government. So I think that NGOs should have a crucial role on monitoring public spending or political party spending or campaign spending. Yes, I finished.
Thank you very much, Dr. Haq. There was a second question from Tunis, and I would like to ask you to please put forward your second question, and also remind you that we have very little time left, but we do have time for that question, and then I will ask for our presenters to comment. Tunisia, please, you have the floor. I don't hear anything from Tunisia. How are we doing? Did we lose you?
Do you hear me?
Heather? I don't hear them.
Is it clear now?
Yep.
Do you hear us?
I don't hear them.
No?
I can hear.
Okay.
I don't hear them.
Okay, so politicians are judges and parties in the drafting of the law, and in many cases we are having laws that are not really meeting the standards for protecting the funding of political parties from any sources of corruption. In fact, in Tunisia, in our law, we have many weaknesses in the law. It apparently meets the standards, but in terms of the financial statements publication and preparation and the control mechanisms, looks very, very weak. So in other countries' experiences, in both for both speakers, did the law been drafted by the parliaments or by the civil society? As I don't think that politicians did a real good law to control funding sources of political parties.
To ask, I understand that there was one final question possibly from Moldova. Would you be able to ask that very, very briefly? And then we will ask our presenters to make final comments. Okay?
Hello, my name is Alina. I'm a journalist and investigative reporter. I have a question about buying and selling political parties. We have such a phenomenon in Moldova when a rich man, a businessman, decides to come in politics, and he finds a small party, and he decides to just buy it, to take as it is his party. And apparently it's a problem with ethics and with democracy, but we don't have any law that regulates this phenomenon. So my question is, do you know about buying, selling parties in your countries or in your experience, and how to put it into a law frame? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is a very tough question, and a good one perhaps to end with, because it inspires to continue discussions. I would like to ask our presenters, and first I would like to call on President Lacalle, please to comment if there's anything you would want to pick up from the previous questions from Tunisia, but also to this last one from Moldova. You have the floor, Mr. President.
Well, whose turn? Mine? Well, You don't sell and buy political parties like soccer teams. It's not done. In any country, in mine and in any other country, you found a party, you organize a party, you register what the legislation asks for with authorities, with a finance commission, with a legislative body, and that's how you found a party. You cannot buy a party. You can give money, any amount of it, if you don't have the limits we are trying to set. Second, I do think that the one way of cleaning the act, one way of making this more palatable for everybody, is the law that admits that the political contributions are tax deductible. That's a very nice and fine point, because if one corporation is going to give money to the parties and will benefit of a tax deduction, and you have at the same time a limit to this contribution, then you have the control of the tax system of which amount the enterprise gave to such and such candidate. When you have the state giving money after the vote, in my country, we have advances on that money when the candidates sign a IOU saying that they will pay if the votes are not enough. So I think there's no perfect system, but let's try to make it the least imperfect as we can. And I think the ideas we have put forward, and especially the ideas that Dr. Hack, who's a scholar in this system, on this subject, has given, are the blueprints for the legislation. I am living here in the Club de Madrid, a very good booklet on the finance of political parties. Our people will translate it into English. It's written in Spanish by one of the best political analysts of Uruguay, Dr. Oscar Botinelli, and you will be able to have it in a few days. I think that is my best contribution, but there you have a systematic analysis of this subject with all the shades and all the systems available the world over. That's my finest contribution, the finest contribution I can make to this discussion. Thank you. God bless you all.
President Lacalle, thank you very much. That was an excellent ending to our seminar. We have very little time. I want to ask you, Dr. Hack, if you have anything to add, or if, and in that case, very, very briefly, because we are close to the limit of our time. Yes, very briefly. The question from Tunisia, whether the law was made by the MPs or the parliament or NGOs. The final law was adopted by the parliament, but in 2009, where there was a deadlock between political parties, Transparency International Hungary prepared a draft legislation. So we put together a complete legal text, which was partly adopted by the party, and this legal draft, which was made, I am repeating, by an NGO, could be a kind of blueprint for what is needed in the final decision. So the NGOs could influence very dramatically. The legislators and the legislators should explain for the public why they choose another way than what was suggested by the NGOs. Buying or selling political parties are
more or less agree with President Lacalle, but there were examples not just in Moldova, but in some Baltic states and in the former Soviet Union, when rich people tried to influence political parties. But I think that from our experience, none of this attempt worked well for the investors, so they spent a lot of money but haven't got back enough because the public will was always stronger than the money. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hack, and thank you, President Lacalle, and both of our audiences and participants in both Moldova and Tunis. Mr. Ben Hassan and Mr. Barbarossi and the rest of you. It's been very, very interesting, and I particularly wish to thank President Lacalle for the booklet that you were talking about and your willingness to share it through the Club de Madrid. There is actually also, I wanted to mention it for all of you, because there is another resource accessible if you would look at International Ideas website. They have both a report on political parties and their funding, and also a financial database, and you will be able to find examples of laws from more than 180 countries, I believe, on how different countries have dealt with the issue of political financing, and both the public part and the restrictions on the private funding. It's been extremely interesting because you have been so concrete, and I think and hope it has been useful for everyone who has been listening, both in Chisinau and in Tunis and also on the web. And I hope that we inspired you to continue discussing. And again, a warm thank you to our distinguished panelists, Dr. Hack and President Lacalle. Thank you. Over and out from the Community of Democracies.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you very much. President Lacalle, congratulations. Uruguay has
Salam, salam.